Welcome to this deep dive into and our mission today is to separate the actual mind-blowing science of this ecosystem from the grocery store marketing hype. Because this ecosystem is running your digestion, your immune system, and maybe even your mood.
Yeah, we are talking about the human microbiome. This is the vast community of microscopic passengers that you carry with you every single second of the day.
And for a long time, the scientific community sort of thought of these bacteria as just, I don't know, passive hitchhikers.
Pretty much. The assumption was that they were just along for the ride, maybe feeding off the scraps. But the major revelation of the last 2 decades is that they were doing critical, essential work that literally keeps you alive.
I definitely want to get into the actual mechanics of that work, but first we have to talk about the sheer scale of this. We are talking about somewhere in the order of 30 to 40 trillion bacteria living on and inside you right now.
Mostly in the gut, yeah.
Mostly in the gut, right. But the sources highlight that these numbers actually went through a major scientific correction a few years ago.
They did. If you look at articles published about the microbiome from, say, a decade ago, you will constantly see one specific statistic repeated everywhere.
Oh, I know the one.
Yeah, the claim that microbes outnumber human cells 10 to 1.
Yes, I remember hearing that exact phrase. It was in every magazine, every health documentary, 10 to 1. It kind of makes you feel like you're just a meat vehicle for a bacterial army.
Well, it certainly paints a picture. But that 10 to 1 figure actually originated from a very rough back-of-the-envelope calculation done way back in the 1970s.
Wait, really? The 1970s?
Yeah. A researcher estimated the number of bacteria in a single gram of feces and then essentially multiplied that by the volume of the entire human digestive tract.
Oh, wow.
It assumed the whole digestive system was as densely packed as the colon, which it absolutely is not. But that rough guess just got repeated so often in academic papers and mainstream articles that hardened into a scientific fact.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because how does the entire global scientific community just accept a napkin math equation for 40 years?
It happens more than you'd think. Scientific literature is vulnerable to the game of telephone, just like anything else.
It feels like a massive census error that got repeated so often it just became local lore. Like everyone in town assumes someone else had actually counted the population, but no one actually had.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until around 2016 that a team of researchers in Israel actually sat down and rigorously redid the math.
And what did they find?
Well, they looked at the latest cell volume data, and they realized that red blood cells account for the vast majority of human cells by number. When they properly balanced that against the actual density of bacteria throughout the body, the ratio turned out to be closer to 1 to 1.
So it's a tie.
It's a tie, yeah.
But, I mean, a 1-to-1 ratio is still staggering. You're telling me half the cells in my body belong to something else?
Exactly. Keeping the real number straight is step 1 in taking this science seriously. The microbiome field is so genuinely exciting that it naturally attracts a lot of overstatement. You aren't made of 10 times more bacterial cells, but you are still carrying around tens of trillions of microbes.
But here's where the source material gets truly wild, though. Because while the physical cell count might be a 1-to-1 tie, when we look at the genetics, the microbes absolutely dwarf us.
Oh, without a doubt, it is an incredibly lopsided genetic imbalance.
Walk us through that, because it sounds crazy.
So the genetics explain how this whole system functions. If you isolate your own human genome, you have roughly 20,000 genes.
20,000. Got it.
That is the complete instruction manual for building and running a human being. The collective genome of your gut microbes, however, if you pool all their genetic material together, contains something like 2 to 20 million genes.
2 to 20 million. So it's like we're trying to build a massive skyscraper with a toy hammer, so we have to hire a giant contracting firm with a 2 million piece toolkit to actually do the heavy lifting.
That is a perfect analogy. We are entirely outsourcing the heavy chemistry. That massive microbial toolkit allows these bacteria to perform complex chemical reactions that our human cells simply evolved without.
Because we just don't have the code for it.
Right. Our bodies literally lack the genetic code to build the enzymes required for certain jobs.
And the most obvious example of this contracting firm at work is when we eat, right?
Absolutely. Digestion is where they shine.
So let's say I'm eating a huge bowl of broccoli. My human cells don't have the tools to fully break it down. What is that microbial toolkit actually doing to the food in my stomach?
Well, first, we have to follow the broccoli down into the large intestine.
Yeah.
Vegetables, whole grains, legumes, these are packed with dietary fiber.
For basically highly complex carbohydrates, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And your human digestive enzymes are completely blind to them. If you didn't have a microbiome, all of that dense, healthy fiber would pass straight through your digestive tract, completely unaltered.
You'd get zero energy from it. It would just be roughage that sweeps the pipes.
Exactly. But you do have a massive microbial workforce in your large intestine waiting for that delivery. They possess the millions of genetic tools required to dismantle those complex carbohydrates.
They ferment the fiber.
They do. During that fermentation process, they break the molecular bonds and produce new, smaller molecules called short-chain fatty acids.
And the sources specifically focus on one of those fatty acids called butyrate. Why is butyrate so important?
Butyrate is the primary fuel source for the cells lining your colon. Your human gut cells actually absorb this bacterial byproduct and burn it for energy.
Wait, so without that butyrate, those human cells would just starve?
They would literally starve, yes. Furthermore, that energy allows your gut lining to stay tight and intact, preventing dangerous pathogens from leaking into your bloodstream.
That is wild.
So a huge chunk of the actual nutritional value and the physical maintenance of your organs is delivered by microbes doing the digesting on your behalf.
We are quietly running an entire massive fermentation industry inside our bodies that we never even think about. We feed them the broccoli, they manufacture the fuel that keeps our own walls from collapsing.
And they manufacture vitamins for you on that same factory floor. A significant portion of your vitamin K, which is essential for blood clotting, and several of your B vitamins are synthesized by your gut bacteria.
Okay, but if this massive fermentation factory is operating right up against our internal tissue, how does the body know not to attack it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. I mean, anatomically, the gut is basically a giant border crossing. It's this massive surface area where everything we swallow meets our bloodstream, and it's harboring trillions of foreign bodies.
The immune system's relationship with these microbes is arguably the most fascinating part of the whole ecosystem. Roughly 70% of your body's entire immune tissue sits directly in and around your gut.
70%.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of our internal defense force is permanently stationed at the border.
Because it is the most vulnerable surface area we have. From the moment you are born, your immune system and your gut microbes are locked in a constant, complex dialogue. They're literally training each other.
Train each other how, though? If an immune cell's job is to destroy foreign bacteria, why doesn't it just wipe out the microbiome entirely?
Well, the immune cells constantly send out specialized scouts, called dendritic cells, to sample the environment in the gut. Now, remember those byproducts we talked about, like butyrate?
Right, the short-chain fatty acids.
Exactly. The beneficial microbes release specific metabolites that act almost like biochemical ID badges. When the patrolling immune cells detect these harmless signals, it acts like a stand-down order.
Oh, so they recognize them as friendly.
Yes,
Mm.
the microbes teach the immune system to build a tolerance, to stay calm. They calibrate the immune response so it doesn't launch a massive inflammatory attack against harmless food or helpful bacteria while still staying vigilant for true pathogens.
And beyond that biochemical training, the sources mention that just having this thriving city of microbes is a physical defense in itself, right?
It is. It's a numbers game called competitive exclusion. The beneficial microbes occupy every millimeter of physical real estate along the gut lining, and they greedily consume all the available nutrients.
So if a dangerous newcomer, a pathogen, manages to survive the stomach acid and arrive in the gut, it simply cannot gain a foothold.
Exactly. There is no space, and there is no food.
Because there's simply no room left at the inn, which paints a very vivid and somewhat alarming picture of what happens when we take antibiotics. The sources heavily emphasize how disruptive they can be.
Antibiotics are a blunt instrument. They kill bacteria indiscriminately. They cannot tell the difference between the pathogen causing your sinus infection and the beneficial bacteria keeping your gut lining intact.
So taking a broad-spectrum antibiotic is basically like dropping a bomb on your garden to get rid of a single weed.
That's exactly what it is.
You clear the lawn, but you also destroy your prized tomatoes and the entire root structure holding the dirt together. You leave the soil completely barren and vulnerable to whatever blows in next.
And opportunistic weeds can and do move into that barren soil incredibly fast.
Which makes me wonder how we ever established this garden in the first place. I mean, we aren't born with this massive toolkit already installed, are we?
No, a baby in the womb is essentially sterile. The acquisition of this community happens rapidly. During a vaginal birth, a baby is coated in their mother's microbes, providing the first massive dose of colonizers.
Oh, wow.
And following that, early feeding drives the development. Breast milk, for example, contains complex sugars called human milk oligosaccharides.
And let me guess, human babies can't actually digest those sugars either.
You guessed it. The human infant cannot digest them at all. The mother is literally expending massive amounts of metabolic energy to produce sugars that the baby cannot use.
That is unbelievable.
But specific beneficial gut bacteria thrive on those exact sugars. Mother Nature evolved breast milk, not just to feed the baby, but to feed the baby's newly forming microbiome.
We are biologically engineered to cultivate the contracting firm from day one.
We really are.
And over the first few years of life, this community assembles and settles into a stable pattern that the sources say is incredibly personal. It's essentially a microbial fingerprint.
It is. Your personal ecosystem is shaped by your early delivery, your childhood diet, the pets you grew up with, the geography of where you live, and your medical history. No two microbiomes on Earth are exactly alike.
Okay, so we've established that the gut is basically a massive sensory organ. It's gathering all this chemical data from our food, and it's physically intertwined with our immune system.
Right.
How does it report all that data back to the brain? Which brings us to the most attention-grabbing frontier in this whole field, the gut-brain axis.
Yes, and we need to tread very carefully here, because the gut-brain connection is simultaneously a very real, scientifically validated phenomenon and the subject of wild commercial overhype.
Let's start strictly with the biology then. How do they communicate?
There is a massive physical superhighway connecting the two. It is called the vagus nerve, and it runs directly from your gut into the base of your brain, carrying electrical signals in both directions.
Okay, so a direct wire.
Yes. The gut is constantly updating the brain on the state of your digestion and your immune system. Furthermore, gut microbes actively stimulate the production of chemical messengers. For instance, a remarkably large share of your body's serotonin, upward of 90%, is actually manufactured in the gut.
Wait, serotonin, the neurotransmitter we constantly associate with mood regulation and happiness?
The very same. Specialized cells in the gut lining, called enterochromaffin cells, produce it, and they are heavily influenced by the chemical byproducts of your microbes.
So our mood is controlled by our stomach.
Well, most of that gut-derived serotonin is actually used locally to regulate bowel movements and digestion. But the microbes also heavily shape systemic inflammation. And we know definitively that chronic inflammation profoundly affects the brain, influencing everything from brain fog to depression.
The sources mention animal studies that show this connection in action. What happens when you manipulate the microbes in a lab?
Researchers use specially bred, germ-free mice raised in sterile bubbles with absolutely zero microbiome. These mice exhibit dramatic behavioral differences.
Like what?
Their stress responses are exaggerated, they show altered social behaviors, and they exhibit different levels of anxiety compared to normal mice. And when researchers introduce certain bacterial strains into these sterile mice, some of those abnormal behaviors resolve.
Okay, I need to stop you there and push back on behalf of the listener.
Sure, go ahead.
Because here is where it gets incredibly confusing. I walk into a grocery store or I open social media and I am bombarded with ads for probiotics, for mood or gut health supplements for anxiety. Are you telling me that these companies are basing their entire product line on sterile mice?
I am saying that leaping from a controlled observation in a sterile mouse to the claim that eating a specific brand of encapsulated powder will cure human anxiety is a massive, unsupported jump.
Right.
Human brains, human social lives, and human diets are enormously complicated.
So the marketing has totally outpaced the microscopes.
By miles. The clinical studies in human beings are still in their infancy. They're often very small, and in media headlines, correlation is doing almost all of the heavy lifting.
Just because they are linked doesn't mean one causes the other.
Exactly. Just because people with depression might have an altered microbiome doesn't automatically mean the microbiome caused the depression. Diet changes, sleep disruptions, and the medications used to treat depression all alter the gut flora.
It's a chicken and egg problem.
It really is. It may well turn out, a decade from now, that we can map specific bacterial strains to specific human psychological outcomes. But the current scientific consensus is that you cannot reliably treat a mental health condition by buying an over-the-counter probiotic supplement today.
So if we strip away the marketing, what does this all actually mean for the listener? Since we can't just reliably buy a magical mood-boosting capsule in aisle 4, how do we actually maintain this internal garden? What is the defensible, actionable science here?
The most robust, scientifically validated advice is usually the least glamorous. You have to feed the ecosystem you already have.
Okay, how?
Beneficial microbes thrive on complex carbohydrates. That means eating a diverse, wide-ranging diet of plants and dietary fiber.
Right, feed the contracting firm the raw materials they need to make the butyrate.
Exactly. Provide the structural components they require to do the heavy lifting. Secondly, introducing fermented foods, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, traditional yogurt.
Because those have live cultures.
Yes, they actually carry live cultures of bacteria into your digestive tract. And large-scale studies are increasingly showing that regular consumption of fermented foods helps increase microbial diversity and lower overall inflammation.
And on the defensive side, we circle back to the bomb in the garden. Antibiotics.
Yes. Do not take antibiotics for a viral cold. They do absolutely nothing to viruses, but they will decimate your microbiome.
That makes sense.
However, and I cannot stress this caveat enough, if a doctor diagnoses you with a serious bacterial infection, you take the prescribed antibiotics. An aggressive, untreated bacterial infection is far more dangerous to your life than a temporarily disrupted microbiome.
Right, you can't let the entire garden get overrun by a dangerous predator just to save the topsoil.
Exactly.
But what happens when that soil is completely ruined? The sources dive into a scenario where the microbiome ecosystem completely collapses, and modern medicine is doing some truly astonishing things to rebuild it.
We are looking at a genuine medical revolution when it comes to treating a specific, very nasty gut infection called Clostridioides difficile, commonly known as C. diff.
And this usually strikes after someone has been hospitalized and put on heavy, prolonged courses of antibiotics, right?
Yes. Think back to our competitive exclusion principle. The heavy antibiotics wipe out the normal healthy microbes. The defensive wall collapses.
Oh, and the C. diff takes over.
Right, because C. diff is incredibly resilient. It forms spores that survive the antibiotic bomb. When the coast is clear, it blooms, aggressively taking over the barren gut and producing toxins that destroy the colon lining.
That sounds awful.
It is stubborn, it recurs frequently, and it can be fatal. For decades, the standard medical response was just to try stronger, different antibiotics.
Like dropping bigger bombs on an already ruined garden.
Exactly. But the clinical shift came with a treatment called a fecal microbiota transplant, or FMT.
Okay, my reaction to this is a mix of deep biological awe and intense squeamishness. But just so we are completely clear, a fecal transplant is exactly what it sounds like.
It is. Doctors take a stool sample from a thoroughly screened, healthy donor. They process it, and then they physically transfer that liquid suspension of the donor's microbial community directly into the gut of the patient suffering from C. diff.
From a medical engineering standpoint, that is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, instead of isolating a single sterile chemical molecule in a pharmaceutical lab to fight a disease, doctors are literally transplanting an entire living ecosystem from one human to another.
It's incredible. The success rates have been staggering, often curing recurrent infections in days. The transplanted ecosystem rapidly establishes itself.
Because it just outcompetes the infection.
Right. The trillions of new bacteria occupy the space, consume the resources, and physically outcompete the C. diff. It proves that sometimes the necessary medical intervention isn't a targeted chemical weapon. The treatment is a robust, diverse community.
It changes the entire definition of what medicine can be. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want you, the listener, to carry this core realization with you. You are a habitat. Trillions of organisms are living their entire lives inside you right now.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. They are digesting your food, they are constantly checking the ID badges of your immune system, and they are murmuring to your brain along the vagus nerve.
And the biological reality of that relationship is one of the most complex, beautiful stories in modern science. It doesn't need the exaggeration of the supplement aisle. The real mechanisms keeping you alive are remarkable, all on their own.
Which leaves us with a provocative thought to end on. We talked about how your microbiome is completely unique to you, and we know it fundamentally dictates how you process chemical compounds. If our internal ecosystems are the gatekeepers that process everything we swallow, we might be approaching a future where doctors can't just prescribe a standard one-size-fits-all pill. I mean, if your specific microbes aggressively break down a medication before it even reaches your bloodstream, The future of healthcare might require doctors to prescribe a completely separate treatment just to temporarily prep your microbiome.
That's a fascinating thought.
Right, essentially asking your internal ecosystem for permission before they can even attempt to heal your human cells. The X-ray might look clean and binary, but you are a complex living world. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us, and we'll see you next time.